what comes next? We have heard from every district attorney they want to see the strongest sentence handed down to this man who was being basically named as the devil by one of the district attorneys today, Mark. So what's your perspective on what's happening next in this room?
All that's going to happen next is, I think, all the power just ended, really. There'll be some final, conclusive power when he bangs the gavel at the end. He's going to impose life sentences consecutively. There'll be no appeal. And that will be the end of it. I mean, I think you just saw a lot of legal powerhouses giving all they could. And at this point now, we really are at the very, very final stage. And I think we have finality now.
He will serve 11 consecutive terms of life without parole, 15 concurrent life sentences, and additional time for weapons charges just on top of that. So certainly he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. But there were many victims who spoke this week saying that's not enough. They didn't get to live their life with their family members. Joseph James DeAngelo did get to live his life. Do you think the way that the district attorneys closed this out today was a strong enough message to get through to not only Joseph James DeAngelo, but also then to summarize the victim statements so powerful this week?
They did the best that they possibly could. They did a great job. Whether or not this reaches Mr. DeAngelo, it appears he's a sick individual. And, I'm sure the judge wishes he could make sure that this sunk in. I can imagine the judge may mention something to him, may direct some comments to him about, how this is compared to a war crimes trial, because in actuality, it's quite similar. So I can imagine the judge may speak directly to him, but none of us really know until the very end whether this is going to have any effect on this individual. It doesn't sound like he has a whole lot of a large life left ahead, though.
Right, exactly. And I know as I've been watching, trying to see if I can get any sense of emotion or remorse coming back through his eyes, and it's been challenging. I know District Attorney Anne-Marie Schubert said, we're not going to let anyone think that you're a frail man who didn't deserve whatever sentence is coming. And so certainly a lot of people looking at him with that mask covering half of his face, trying to see if we can get some sort of emotion. It doesn't appear that there is any, at least from the perspective of watching through the television screen. We did hear many of the district attorneys acknowledge the judge and talk about how compassionate and sincere and what a real form of leadership was shown as they continued to go through with the sentencing hearings and the different victim impact statements. Can you talk about the role of the judge in this, trying to make sure that they do, of course, stay the course, stay on course with what's happening legally, but then also allowing these victims to speak and staying compassionate as well?
Yeah, this is obviously a big assignment for a judge to come in to take into account something this serious, okay, first of all, and then with, so many victims for so many years who have so much welling up. You've got the defense who are going to try to protect the rights of the individual very, very much, and you've got the prosecution, which couldn't be more zealous. This case is the definition of prosecutorial zeal. They wanted this. So Judge Bowman did an excellent job. I think anybody watching would say, hey, man, this is justice at its best.
I've listened to all your statements, each one of them. And I'm truly sorry to every one of them.
It was really a stunning moment. Did you expect DeAngelo to stand up and speak in his own?
No, I think his defense attorneys probably said, look, you've received the benefit of the decorum of this system. And it really compels you to humanize yourself, to stand up, show the respect that was given to you by this plea agreement. There's so many, death penalty cases here, and he was not given the death penalty. I'm certain that his lawyers told him that he had to, do something to show that he was appreciative of what's been the justice that's been given him, the mercy that's been given him. And I think that's probably where it came from. I was kind of surprised. I thought he was just going to sit there stone-faced and motionless.
Yeah, and that is, I think, what most of us thought. My jaw literally, if you could have seen a reverse camera on myself, and I know a lot of my colleagues, mouths dropped when that happened, when he stood up, and there was that very pregnant pause before he spoke, and I think we all were waiting just to hear what his voice sounded like, what his demeanor would be. He's been covered with a mask because of the COVID-19 epidemic, and so it's just been difficult to get any emotion and really feel any remorse from him, and so it was quite the moment. We also heard from the attorneys, though, trying to paint this picture of who Joseph DeAngelo was to his family members. What role do you think that plays in how maybe the public perceives him, if any at all?
Well, it is their chance to put a coda, to put an ending on this and have some input. And, you know, I think for the record, for everyone, you know, we needed to hear that as well. I mean, that does make the picture complete. It doesn't excuse anything. It doesn't make anybody feel any different, but it does complete the picture. And so I'm glad that they did it.
Yeah, and it certainly is a day that I think district attorneys across the world will never forget. Obviously, the way that Joseph DeAngelo was found guilty of all of this, the way that we were able to even identify him as this person who matched the DNA was because of genealogy and going back to that DNA discovery. And so moving forward, you can only imagine how many more cases will be discovered through this form of DNA identification. And obviously, I think this was a case, you know, we hear in situations in a courtroom often different cases being cited. You know, when a lawyer presents a case, they will often go back to other cases that preceded it. So do you think this will serve as kind of now the standing point for juries and for cases and for lawyers and defense attorneys and you know, all of the people who are involved in these sorts of cases moving forward? How much of a role and how much of a big role does this play for future cases?
I think that's an excellent point. In fact, note that Judge Bowman actually kind of mentioned that you know, he bets this defendant thought he was going to skate free and was never going to have to face justice. But then Judge Bowman mentioned that, you know, through the dogged determination of an investigator and DNA and so forth. So you're absolutely right. This was maybe the biggest case in California history, possibly one of the biggest ever in the nation in American criminal justice. And it was solved by, you know, molecules left behind at the scene of a crime, trace evidence, solved it. And so that is the new frontier you've identified. This is absolutely the thin edge of a much broader wedge of how science is coming into the criminal justice system through DNA.
Absolutely. Attorney Mark Reichel, again, we are so appreciative for your perspective and your legal expertise. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.